and welcome into Poke the Bear episode 36. 36. I tried to think of a number or a player who had the number 36, but I couldn't think of one on the Bruins, at least. I feel like there hasn't been one in a while, unless you have one.
No, we'll call this one the Marcus Smart episode.
The Marcus Smart episode. I'm Evan Marinofski, alongside Conor Ryan of Boston Sports Journal. Connor, how are we doing?
Evan, I'm doing very well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. The weather's nice. It's warm. This is fun times of year. I always say to people, I love this time of year because like you grind through winter. Especially this winter. This winter was tough. It was very cold. COVID. Couldn't go many places. The cases were really bad over the winter. And now the cases are going down. The vaccines are getting rolled out, and it's beautiful outside. So like I'm all for this.
It's an overall upward trajectory, right? Like you get to the spring, the weather's getting better. This is a normal year. This is, you're getting ready for the playoffs in a couple of weeks. You got the summer after that. Then you got even when you go from the summer to the fall, like who doesn't like fall? You got hopefully, you got baseball postseason. You got just general fall stuff, wear your flannels, go apple pick and have a good time. And then what happens after that? Oh my God, you go right into the holiday season, right? You got Thanksgiving, Christmas. Then you hit January, and then it goes into that dip again, right? Like January to like mid-March. Not tough, not ideal, but as a whole, we're in the upward trend right now.
I've always been very fortunate because my birthday is in February. So at least it's something that I can look forward to. I can, I have it then, and it's like, okay, good. Like this gives me something in February, because other than that, there's nothing else in February. There's the Super Bowl, and then there's hockey and basketball. So yes. And the one thing is, I don't know if people can tell, I'm a little congested, and that is because with the warm weather comes the allergies, which is always fun, and you always forget about. You always just run headfirst into the outdoors. And then you quickly realize the sneezes come and all that, and you worry right now because like, oh my God, do I have COVID? And it's like, no, it's just I could taste my breakfast this morning, so mainly just a really bad case of the allergies. But at any rate, there is Bruins to get to. There's quite a bit of Bruins, and as people know, as the trade deadline approaches, April 12th, there's going to be a lot more about trades and a lot more reported about trades. And yesterday, Tuesday, it was reported that to get Mattias Ekholm from the Predators, you would need a first-round pick, an elite prospect, and then a third asset. So the third asset's kind of whatever. You want to throw in a vending machine, you throw in a vending machine. Maybe a little more than that. But the main thing is the first-round pick and the elite prospects. Now, it's been talked about for a long time that Mattias Ekholm would be a great fit in Boston. They have the first-round pick. They do have the elite prospect. And maybe if you want to say like elite prospects, like you could have some more. But because a lot of people would say that their farm system's not that great. So how many elite prospects do you really have?
Yeah.
But at any rate, the real question that everyone's kicking around right now is, should the Bruins pay this price? Should they do this? And we talked about this on Bruins Beat because Fluto had kind of did a proposal. Was a first, Johnny Beecher and Urho Vakanainen. Do you do that deal if you're the Bruins?
Yeah, I mean that it's quite the ask in terms of what it would take to get Ekholm. And again, granted, it's because Ekholm's very, very good, right? I mean, I think if you add him to this decor, you've got one of the better top fours, I think, whether it's, let's just say it's, McAvoy, Ekholm, Grizzly-Carlo, if they go back to that, like that's pretty damn good. You can flip those around, and you still got two really, really, really good D pairs. So I think in terms of his value, I think it would certainly help a lot. And I think you've seen a lot of people say like, well, their D's looking great. Like even when they haven't been winning games, I think they're averaging like 1.5 goals against per game the last 2 weeks. It's like, well, yeah, but also you got a guy like Ekholm. It's not like he's let's look at like a David Savard or one of these other guys that they could be going after, where he's a very good defenseman, but more of a stay-at-home guy. Like Ekholm is very good at generating 5-on-5 offense, which you need, right? Like it's kind of a big deal. So, I mean, I think he would help out in multiple regards. He's got, I think, four goals already this year. So he knows how to get pucks through traffic. He's good at generating offense. He's good in transition for a big body at 6'4". So in terms of what his value is, it's certainly worth it for the Bruins if you're committed to making that push forward this going into this postseason. It's just what the cost will be. And again, who knows if that's Nashville trying to drive the price up by kind of stating those terms, right, with the first. And I think maybe the bigger challenge is just what those asking prices are. Like, what is like the other asset, right? Are we talking about like a guy who's maybe not getting regular minutes here, like a Bjork or something like that? Or are we talking about, do they want like DeBrusque on top of that, right? Like that's one of, I think, the bigger issues, because I think we talk about it all the time, especially when it comes to trades. But I think if you're the Bruins, you also have to be cognizant of the fact that it's not just these three pieces that you have to give up. If it's, who knows what they value as an elite prospect? Like, are we talking about Stanika, or are we talking about, which if that's the case, then you're like, all right, like I don't think Sadiq is untouchable by any means, but also you're already giving up a first and another asset. You have to be aware of what it is. If it's Urho Vakanainen, who has value, I think, to a lot of teams because you don't have to protect him in the expansion draft, then maybe that's someone that you look at including. But as a whole, I think it depends on what the cost is, because you're going into this, if you acquire Ekholm, yeah, you give up these three pieces, but also you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're giving up a fourth guy in terms of how you're approaching the expansion draft. Like, at the end of this, let's say they get Ekholm, and then because of it, whether they can't strike a deal with Seattle to protect a guy, and Seattle takes a guy like Grzelcyk, then you look at the Ekholm deal in a grander scaling. Like, all right, we gave up a first, Beecher, Vakanainen, and technically Grzelcyk. We lost all those guys just to get Ekholm, who knows, if the Bruins win the Stanley Cup this year, then it's all worth it, right? But if not, then you lose a guy like in Grzelcyk, who they really value, who I think is a key cog on that decor, for a guy in Ekholm who is very, very good, but also I think next year he'd be 31. Like, you have to look at the overall asset management. I think the expansion draft weighs heavily into that. And who knows, like, I think, we talk about the expansion draft, and like most things where we hop on, how they're going to get out of this jam. We look at Tampa. I think for the last couple of months, we're like, oh, Tampa's absolutely screwed. How are they going to pay for all these guys? Right. They're done. They gotta sell. They're going to sell Killorn and Palat and all these guys for pennies on the dollar. No, they got out of it just fine. So we'll see what they do with the expansion draft. But I think that's something that weighs into their decision making in terms of getting Ekholm, because again, it's going to cost a lot, but I also think you have to be cognizant of just how much is too much for one player, when, let's be real, like, they need to get some help on the D, but they also, they have to get some scoring up front too. Ekholm, great 5-5 guy, but he's not the guy who's going to be the game changer in terms of getting that 5-5 offense running.
It's free donut Wednesday from Dunks. Enjoy one free class.
I see what they did there.
And relatable. That's a Matt Light Pittsburgh comedy. Enjoy one free classic donut drink purchase. So now I have a reason to go to Dunks. But I probably won't get out until later. I work all day. I have a shift that I have to do at Turner. So if I go at 6:30, is the donut going to be fresh? Am I going to have like an assortment of donuts to pick from? Probably. I mean, dude, not.
If you weren't there at like 6:30 a.m., your donut's probably going to be pretty stale.
That's an odd point.
Love Dunkin', but we gotta be real. It's like dealing with Ekholm. You have to be cognizant of your situation. You have to understand that whatever French crawler you get, it's not going to be the highest quality by the time you get there at 9 a.m.
The best was when you were younger and you'd go on to an early hockey game, and mom or dad would take you to Dunks before or after the game, and it would be like 7, 8 a.m. and every donut rack is full with fresh donuts and bagels and muffins, and it's like, oh, I have everything I could ever want here to pick from. It's honestly, it's overwhelming. The stress of picking the right donut in that moment was just too much, but they were always fresh. Yes. So what you hit on, I think, with Ekholm hits a way bigger question. We talked a little bit about this on Bruins Beat, is, should the Bruins be buyers? Like, and I think people are like, what? But when you really think about it, like, you look at the division, you look at the situation, look at the expansion draft, and, is it really worth it? Is this roster worth it to go completely all in on, to go balls to the wall on, to give up Johnny Beecher, a first round pick, Grzelcyk technically in the expansion draft, probably, a third asset, whatever that might be. And that doesn't even encapsulate what it would take to then get a top 6 forward, which we'll get to in a little bit. Like, that would take a lot more. That's maybe another future first. That's another prospect. like, let's say hypothetically, because we'll get to Connor Garland in a second. Credit to you for being on Garland from like last offseason when we were like digging for topics. I remember you brought Connor Garland up and I was like, what? And now he's a legit trade target. But like, are you gonna look back? Like you mentioned it with Ekholm. If you don't want a cup, let's say you're out in the first or second round. Let's say you don't even make the playoffs. Imagine you don't make the playoffs. Then it's like, what was the point of this? What, like, you add Ekholm and Connor Garland to this team. It makes you better, yes, but I will put it this way: is this team, should they be buyers at the trade deadline? Because I think there's different levels of buying. That I don't think it's like you're in or completely in or you're out. I think it is different levels of it.
Yeah, I agree with you in that sense because Sweeney talked about it earlier this week, where in terms of how active they are, obviously they're looking at deals now because you don't want to wait until April 12th to make these trades and all of a sudden oh great, we got Ekholm and Garland or what have you, and they're playing on like April 21st when you finally first get them in a game. It's not a deal, right?
Yeah, Connor, can you drive across from Arizona to
Yeah.
Boston?
He's a Boston guy, so you think he could be committed to it, but yeah, I think it's a situation where it's going to depend on just how the team is looking, but I think the overall question for them is just going to be how committed you are in terms of buying in and acquiring assets, because I feel like it's not going to be a situation where they're going to stand pat or sell, because people like they should just sell. I'm like, all right, what value are you thinking you're going to get? Like, who are you trading? Because are you trading Krejci? Is Krejci going to like net you a package that's going to drastically fuel this rebuild that you want to do? Like, is Rask going to I think probably Rask, you probably get quite a bit for him, but still, it's two pending UFAs. Like, are those guys going to change? Get you. It's not like the Celtics Nets trade from 2013, right? Where you get the assets and you're like, oh, we're ready to roll. Because again, I don't know. I'm not buying into the fact that the Bruins are looking at this as like a 2-3 year window where they're true cup contenders, and then it's like we're blowing it up. Like we're gonna tank. We're gonna I think they're cognizant of the fact that their true cup window with Bergeron and those guys is dwindling, but I don't view it as all right in 2023. Like we're gonna win 21 games and we're gonna compete and try to get a top 5 pick, because as we said multiple times, how's embracing that mentality helped the Red Wings, who haven't had one so far good talented top 5 pick the last couple of years, like at Buffalo. So
that's the obvious one.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
like
Edmonton before McDavid.
Yeah, exactly. So I view it as more of them looking at it as a revamp, bridge retooling more than anything, is how they view 2 years from now how they're going to approach it. So I don't know if they're going to fully blow things up and rebuild, but I think it's more of a question of how much do they how aggressive they are at this at this trade deadline, right? Because it's more of, are you looking at swinging for the fences and getting Ekholm and a legit top 6 guy, or are you looking at let's get Mark Stahl and Bobby Ryan?
Thinking Mark Stahl, Bobby Ryan.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's not mortgaging or giving up the farm of talented players, and they're not moving DeBrusk, who again I think people keep on mentioning that like he's the number 1 trade chip, and ideally I think the Bruins don't want to move him because I think they're terrified of him going anywhere else and becoming a consistent 20 goal scorer. I keep on seeing Jake Virtanen trade rumors and people throwing that out there, and it's like, guys, he's much better than Jake Virtanen. Who it's always funny, people always mention they want Jake Virtanen when like the dude got in trouble also for like clubbing in like the summer up in Vancouver, which like if that was in Boston, people would be shitting their pants. That was a story. So it's funny how that works when he's not on your own team. But
he had a good hot card a few years ago.
Yes. So I think it's one of those situations where it's more of the question isn't going to be, are they going to like be buyers or sell, just how aggressive they're going to be, because I don't see, unless they completely bottom out. If they play Buffalo, I think maybe three times before the deadline, and they get smoked in all of them, and they lose to the Devils and the Rangers, and Philly, who is keeping them afloat by also playing like trash right now. If Philly beats
Sucky.
them, yeah, if they're going into a slump like this, which you'd imagine they won't, like they're at least getting, one of the takeaways from Cassidy talking with us recently was seems like a lot of guys who were injured, outright injured, are getting closer to a return. So they shouldn't be, plummeting in terms of just the overall state of the roster. But I think that's the main decision they have to make, just how aggressive they go for it. Because I think you also have to be aware of they probably don't want to go through a situation where you're getting guys that are only going to be here for a year or two. That's why you look at Garland as a guy that would make sense where he's 25 and he's an RFA. Where you get him this year, he obviously helps out this year, but he's also a piece I think you can add to this next kind of core that you're trying to build. So it's a lot of different factors to weigh into it, but I think it all comes down to just how aggressive they want to be and whether the prices are right, because they've got, some cap flexibility that most teams don't have. They got the need to acquire guys. It's just, I think, reading the rest of the league and whether it's worth swinging for the fences this year or, go for it again next year, because again, time's running out, but also you have to be aware of just what challenges lie in front of you.
The real question is this a Lee Stempniak deadline or is this a
Yes.
Rick Nash deadline? Which obviously,
Yes.
and that's the thing, you mentioned Mark Stahl, Bobby Ryan. People would be pissed if that was the two that they got. But again, if Sweeney looks at this team and says, I have second thoughts, I have second guesses, I kind of want to not mortgage the future on these guys. I'd rather take a chance, sell low for, Bobby Ryan or something, or buy low, buy low. For a guy like Bobby Ryan and maybe Mark Stahl. Again, those don't excite me at all. Those do not excite me one bit. And I don't think they should excite you. But if Sweeney says, you know what, I don't think that this team has it, I'm not prepared to give up a first or Johnny Beecher or Jake DeBrusk or any of these assets that teams want, then that's what he's going to do. Now, again, you know what the fallout of that's going to be, because if Bobby Ryan and Mark Stahl come here, they finish fourth or third in the East, they're out in the first or second round, people are going to go, well, what could have been? Imagine if you swung for the fences, got Ekholm and Garland, how much better you would have been, which I think would be the big issue with a move like that. Because people are just going to constantly say, well, what if you did more? It's like last offseason when they got Richie and Kasha and neither really did a heck of a lot in the bubble. By a heck of a lot, I mean, like, did almost nothing. Everyone said, well, what if you just do what Tampa did? Maybe you get past Tampa. So let's get to the next or the last topic on today's show. And this was an interesting one. This kind of came from 31 Thoughts. Arizona is a team a very underrated team in what they could sell. And being kind of a replenishment for many different teams. They're going to be sellers. TBT to when they got Taylor Hall though last deadline. People forget that was such a good time. But they don't have a first round pick, and they have assets to sell. And the team they currently have is construed, I would not say, is one that is really set up to win championships for many years down the line. Yeah. But there's one interesting trade chip, and that's Conor Garland, which should be a fun name for you to say when he evidently comes to the Bruins, Conor Garland. But Scituate, the Scituate sniper. So Arizona over Nashville, is that the move? Is the move instead going from the Coyotes instead of the Predators?
Yeah, well, it seems like there's building momentum in terms of Arizona being a potential team that I think a lot of teams might be focusing on for assets, because it's not just, Freeman, I think, kind of started it where he mentioned Garland being a potential ad and, the Bruins being linked to it. But I think also on insider trading on TSN with LeBron and Drager and a few of those guys, I think Drager said that Coyotes, again, they've got talent there, right? They got Garland, they've got Keller, they've got Ekman Larson, they got pieces there, but it seems like, especially with new management in town with Armstrong, they could be looking at kind of just wiping the slate clean, freeing up money, and kind of starting from scratch. I think Drager said that the Coyotes are, quote, willing to discuss just about anything on the trade front. So make of that what you will in terms of who's available. But it seems like they might be in a more position to kind of hit the reset button than Nashville, where, again, I don't know if it's the right move or not, but, they mentioned that Nashville could trade Ekholm, right? But also they're not inclined to do it just for the sake of doing it, right? Like he's got another year on his contract. They're still, I think, technically in the playoff picture because I think Chicago's coming back down to earth, which again, I don't know why you're still trying to extend this kind of window you have that you really don't have your Nashville, right? Like I don't know if what run you're gonna be going on, but that might be complicating things a little bit if for teams looking to acquire some of the guys Nashville has. But for Arizona, though, if Gallon's available, they've got other pieces. They've got some defensemen who are on expiring contracts. Again, none of them are game changers like Ekholm, but if you're just looking for bodies, they've got a few guys. And kind of look at Arizona, right? It's tough to kind of size up what Arizona wants to do because we were in this position months ago talking about the Bruins, trying to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson from them, and that team wanted to get that contract off the books, which, considering that team also is like behind on its rent payments for their own arena, it's not great. So you can make sense why they're trying to free up some cash, but you look at just their overall mentality of dealing with that, of hitting the reset button. Like, are they inclined to move a guy like Garland? Are they inclined to move a guy like Clayton Keller? Like, is that a guy who's 22 years old? He's a very good young center, but he's also signed for, I think he's also another BU guy, but he's also signed for 7 years, I think, after this at 7.1 million. He's pretty much getting paid David Krejci money. Like, is Armstrong and those guys cool with a guy like that on the books when they want to try to hit the reset button? So there's a couple of different factors you have to weigh into it. And it seems like Arizona is more inclined to be willing to part ways with a lot of guys than most teams are. So I think they could definitely be a team that the Bruins and other teams should be targeting in terms of, it seems like they're kind of open for business. Because again, as you said, a year ago, they got Taylor Hall and you thought they were going to make a run for it. Then this offseason, hey, we're going to move Oliver Ekman-Larsson if anyone wants to take his contract. So it seems like it's tough to get a full gauge on what their thinking is in terms of where they are as a franchise, where they want to hit the reset button. But it seems like the momentum now is, completely starting from scratch, which could open the door for a lot of appealing guys hitting the trade market if you're willing to pay up.
I just had an idea. You mentioned the Krejci money with Keller. What if over the offseason they don't re-sign Krejci, but they do go out and trade for Keller? That could be wheeling and dealing, Donnie.
I'm just saying.
Just tossing that one out there. When that happens, I want this pulled. I want someone to be like, hey, Evan said this way back in March. But anyways, yes, it is funny that the Predators are, 31 points right now. They're 4 back of the Blackhawks, who are in 4th. It's funny. I was looking at the West and I didn't realize how far the Kings had fallen. The Kings were a team that was like, in the playoff race, a week or two ago. And now they're 32 points. They're 5 points out of a playoff spot in the West, which obviously we didn't expect them to do anything, but it was kind of cool seeing Kopitar carry that team into the playoffs. But at any rate, yes, the Coyotes, by the way, are also only 4 points out of the playoff race. But I also do think that at the same time, like, do you want to just keep doing this every year? Where you're like a fringe playoff team, or do you want to actually just like blow it up and try this all over again? Which is, I think, where they're leaning towards. But yeah, I would not be surprised. Kemper's also a guy who's been rumored to kind of maybe be on the move. And it's funny, he was a guy who, was he ever rumored to come here over the offseason? I know that when the Ekman-Larsson trade stuff was happening, people kind of were like, hey, they could throw Kemper in that deal.
Yeah, I think it was more one of those where if you're looking at just a bigger overall package, that would make sense to look at a guy like Kemper. So I mean, they've got pieces. They're not built as a strong overall team. They're not scoring a lot of goals, but they've got definitely pieces around that I think a lot of other teams would definitely covet.
Phil Kessel back to Boston. Reunite
him with Krejci. Yeah, there we go.
Everything just comes right back. But yeah, I do think that ultimately that is a team who you could get an asset or two from. And again, is in way more of a position to deal off. And again, it sounds like from the past with the Ekman-Larsson stuff, the Bruins and the Coyotes have a good enough trade relationship where this is a potential partnership that could happen. So that could be the team. That could be the team that your Boston Bruins make a cup run off of. So last year was the Anaheim Ducks. This year, maybe it's the Arizona Coyotes. Woo! What fun. But speaking of the Ducks, by the way, Zegras, Drysdale, that team looks, they got some good young talent over there. And they still have more coming. So
yeah, that's, again, we talk about Buffalo and the Red Wings and those guys, but you also have some guys who keep on hitting on young prospects. So again, it's all a crapshoot, right? Look at Ottawa. Ottawa, after trading Carlson and Stone, all these guys are like, oh, this team's going to be the dumpster for a while. And they're not good, but you look at their kind of pool of young players and it's pretty good. So
It is.
But Anaheim's they've got a fun young core to kind of build around. You look at the same as the Kings, who got a whole bunch of younger players as well that look pretty good. So it's going to be a few rough years on the West Coast for hockey, but it seems like they're at least all those teams are, or maybe not the Sharks. Sharks, I think, are going to be screwed for a while. That some of those deals they had are really bad. But
well, they have John Leonard, Mario Ferrara. They'll be fine.
There you go. They're going to be. They'll be pieces the next. They actually been playing pretty well, right?
They have been. Yeah, they've been good.
There you go.
Nice.
But there you go. But as a whole, a few more years for the West Coast, but they're on their way back.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing to see. I love that hockey's on the West Coast. I have cousins in California who are like big Ducks fans. They're diehard Ducks fans. So they really want the Ducks to come back, and that's why the Ducks are one of my favorite teams. Because I'm like, hey, they're a cool team. Those Scott Niedermayer days, Chris Pronger, those were fun Ducks teams. Those teams were great. I always loved the story that Brian Burke told of how the Ducks desperately wanted Joe Thornton, and he basically said, like, I'll protect 5 guys. You can have whatever you want of the rest. And you probably could have got like Getzlab or Perry or who else was on that team that was young and good? Bobby Ryan was young and good back then.
Ryan. There's definitely a couple of guys.
There's a defenseman, I think. Well, Chris Kunitz, was he on that team?
I don't think he was on, because I think everyone wrote a story after that Burke interview came out where it was like you looked at the roster and like, oh god, because they had like 2 or 3 nasty guys, but they definitely had a whole bunch of guys that if the Bruins struck that deal, they would have snagged. So, but
instead they got Marco Sturm, Wayne Primo, and Brad Stewart. 3 incredible. Well, Sturm was good actually. I'll give a check on Sturm, but Primo and Brad Stewart not so much. But at any rate, that has been today's Poke the Bear. Connor, is there anything that you'd like to plug before we leave?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at a few more trade scenarios. As we talked about today with the Coyotes, might do a deeper dive on just kind of their situation and who else besides Gowan they could be looking at targeting, if that's a team that really wants to start a fire sale. So we'll have all that over at BSJ, so subscribe over at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at ConnorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And I'm Evan Marinofski from CLNS Media. That's Conor Ryan of Boston Sports Journal. This has been Poke the Bear episode 36. Have a great rest of your day.